Hello, hello. So we're going to paint a cloud hat. It's important when you paint a cloud hat that you have a good reference photo. So this is the reference photo that I'm going to use. I would recommend real clouds. You could use illustrations depending on the kind of look that you're going for. So I'm going to use this. I have it pulled up on my phone so that I can study the image while we're working. But before I even begin the hat, I study this image. I look at what are all of the colors that I see, and I'll go through those in just a moment. I start with the very background, the background sky, and although that might look like it's a single color, you'll see in a moment that I'm going to fade it from a blue to, at the base, a very light pink. And so that's kind of where you start. Let me jump over to my document camera. You can see I've got my plates kind of prepared with a bunch of colors, and I'll kind of show you some of those colors to start with. So here's two blues that I'm going to use to begin the hat. I'm also going to use this pink to create that fade. White, even though it may not seem like there's white highlights at the end will really kind of make your clouds look like they're lit up, and I'll show you that. I'm using two plates today because just to try to keep colors from getting mixed in together. On this other one, I've got a darker blue, which I'll use. It'll become kind of a purple. This is a rose. This is called apricot, this color here. And this orange was already here, but I'll potentially use that. And also this purple was already here. I'll probably use that as well. So two plates, kind of the same process. I'm going to use three brushes. Mostly, I'm probably not going to use this little fine tip brush, but I've got these two guys. I'll definitely use this guy for most of for a lot of it, and then this will start to get into some of the finer details with painting the clouds. Got my hat here. I'm going to begin just the way that I generally do with the hats. So I'm going to wet the entire surface. I've got a nice cup. I guess it's just off screen here. Some really clean water. I'll try to make it so you can see all that. Clean water is very important. If while we're working the water gets really muddy, I might go back and refresh it. So, all right. So I'm going to begin just bringing water, clean water onto the hat. Remember, you want to try not to get too much on the brim, and you can see it kind of soaking in there. This clean water really helps the paint that we're going to use to move, and so that you end up without having streaks or spots that are different from the other sections. So just bringing the water across. Alright, so the whole surface of the hat now is wet. I'm going to begin by using these guys. And I'm going to start with the darkest blue. So I'm going to, again, bring water on my brush, so nice soaking wet brush, and I'm just going to mix up. Remember, this piece is important, so you can see there's a glob of paint there on my brush. I want to continue to kind of move that brush in this liquid paint until that glob of paint kind of dissolves. If it doesn't, then you're going to potentially end up with a streak. I'm going to start at the top, just touching. Remember, if you get it on that little tab at the top, that it will potentially paint that tab, and it will be difficult to get that off. To fade it out, I'm now going to take my brush and I'm going to clean it in the water. I'm taking the edge of the brush on the cup here, and I'm getting most of the water out, and then I'm just going to use that wet brush to kind of draw that color that's already there on the hat down. Really important when you're doing skies to, instead of going up and down, to paint left to right. That way you'll get a kind of a nice even fade. Alright, I'm going to go now to my lighter blue. bringing a really nice wet brush over, and I'm just going to, again, mix all of that paint up, making sure there are no globs of thick paint on my brush. And now I'm going to, again, bring this over and kind of create that stripe of color all the way across. I'm continuing to add a little bit of paint to the brush. I want to mix this section here because right now they're not blended too well. Again, just a reminder that I'm moving that side to side. One thing I'm going to do now to bring this dark blue down is I'm going to go back to that darker blue and just kind of touch it into that space. Still moving that side to side motion. If you notice there are any places, so like right here, there's kind of an intense little block of color. I like to work my brush in kind of a circular motion to get that to kind of fade out. Alright, so I'm pretty happy with this fade. 2 blues, nice sky. I could stop here. I want to bring some pink into it because that's what I saw when I was kind of studying the photograph and thinking about it. So just touching a little bit of the pink. It's alright, you can see there's a little bit of that blue that's mixed in, totally okay. So now it's become kind of like a pink purple. Making sure there's no globs of paint on my brush. And now I'm going to touch just the bottom edge. Being real careful not to get it on the brim. Work my way all the way across. And now I'm just going to use that side to side motion. This is a place, one of the things that's nice with a sky is, so just so you know, I'm looking and I'm seeing that there's kind of a more, it's not faded here. So I'm going to bring some more pink into that. And what I was going to say is that because we're painting a sky, there's no right or wrong. I mean, your eye will see it if it doesn't feel right, but as far as these colors go, you know, it doesn't have to match the photograph exactly. What's I think important is that you have kind of a clean fade, and that'll really help you to feel like your sky is realistic. All right, my water is a little bit dirty, but I'm going to continue to work with it. I'm just going to bring, so again, just so you see, hard to see here, but this is the image that I'm studying, and I like to have this up the entire time that I'm working. I'm going to start with the darker colors on the clouds. And again, what's really important when you're doing this is that you really water down your paint. So I'm going to use my other palette. Bring that over to the center for a minute. And like I said, I want to use that darker blue. So I'm going to bring a lot of water over. And I might not use, you can see I'm leaving some of that glob of paint so that I have it. It's kind of in reserve. But I might not just use this color solid as it is. I like some of this purple. So I think I'll mix a little bit of that in there. That color starts to feel like the cloud shapes. So still have the wet hat. Got a decent kind of a purple blue color here that I like. And I'm just going to start to look at the cloud shapes. I'm starting with one that's kind of in the center. You can see I'm just kind of tapping a loose shape on here. You can see already that it starts to bleed out, starts to fade out. So keep that in mind, that your cloud, the way you leave it, is probably going to move a little bit. Bring this all the way over. There are more cloud shapes down here. It's important and kind of nice. It's a nice feature of painting these clouds is that you can kind of keep it loose. Let's see another one over here. So this one's a small one. Again, it's really helpful to have that photograph where I can just kind of continue to look at it and study it. I talk with students about you can kind of make it up. My experience here with, so I'm looking at the photograph, but My experience has been that if I start to make up what I'm seeing, so like I want to have a cloud over here and I don't really see one, is that sometimes that'll get you in a place where you end up unhappy with your result. So I really try to stay to the original image. You can see I've just got a bunch of cloud shapes here. And the truth is I could probably just stop here, and this would be kind of interesting visually, it would be kind of pretty. I'm going to continue though, just to show you, kind of take you through all the layers. A big piece that I think a lot of people may wonder about is like, how do you get highlights? I'm actually going to switch, just because I'll be able to get a little bit more control. I'm going to switch my brushes. So go to this medium guy. This is a number 8 round. I'm still going to use the purple and the blue, and what I'm noticing as I'm looking at it is that first cloud that I started with has really has faded a lot, and I want that to be darker than it was. That's kind of a prominent cloud. So I'm just going to bring kind of some more intense color. Again, as I'm looking at the photo, I want to kind of look at, well, where is this? Because there are these darker colors. Do they come all the way out to the edge? They don't. So I'm just going to kind of bring it across. Hopefully you're noticing as I'm doing this how random I'm being. I'm really trying to like not be super precise with my brush. I'm going to darken up some of these guys. A lot of times the darkness comes from the bottom part of the cloud, so that's kind of important. A lot of times too, these clouds are, slightly connected to the other ones that are around them. So I'm really just gonna kind of continue to bring. These are shadows, really. So the reason that these clouds look the way they do is because of the shadows that are created. I like to think about, when I'm making art, why, if you have a better understanding of why the things look the way they do, then I think you create them better. You do a better job of kind of making them come to life. So the reason that clouds have these shadows is because the sun's behind them, and most of the light from the sun is blocked in these clouds because of the amount of water that's in the clouds. So when I think about that, that kind of helps me to think about the shading process, what I'm doing right now. I like, so I kind of like these lighter little clouds that are up here, but I'm going to add just a little bit to kind of the bottom parts of them. So they're staying mostly light, but they're just getting a little bit of that shadow. Really important to know as you're doing these cloud shapes on your hats, they're going to fade. So even if, like right now, it looks pretty intense, these lower sections, all that's going to fade because the color is going to continue to move. It's going to continue to kind of blend out. All right, so now I'm going to start to bring some of the highlights. And I'm going to begin, this color over here looks kind of intense and dark, but this is a good one for our purposes. I'm looking again at my image, and I'm noticing that a lot of this pink is going to touch just kind of the bottoms. Just to show you there. The bottoms of these clouds. I'm just very gently touching that. And I kind of bring that across. And it's just kind of that blend into, this is a part of what's making that shadow. I'm just going to kind of bring this across, kind of blend it out a little bit. tiny bit on the bottom section. Just bring that across. These are good. I'm just coming back and just kind of blending out just a little bit. Maybe even create just a little tiny bit up here. There are some strong highlights that I'm seeing from my photo in the top cloud, so I'm going to bring those back in just a second. But that feels pretty good. I might come back with just a little bit. So one of the nice things with the gouache, if you want to kind of revisit something, so I'm just going over this. That pink looked a little too intense there, so just brought that darker blue back over it a little bit. All right, so now I'm going to come to, this is called the apricot, and it's very similar to white, but it has orange in it, and this is going to be good for highlight. I'm noticing that the water, and I think I still had some paint on my brush, it muddied this paint just a little bit, so I want to try not to have it kind of muddy. I want it to be that clean, light orange color. And I'm just going to touch a few little places in here. So I'm looking again at like where those highlights are. So just so you can see, I'm studying my photograph, and I'm just going to kind of bring it along those edges. Extends just a little bit. Totally okay if this kind of mixes in with that reddish pink that we were using. That's a good highlight there. I'm pretty happy with that. I'm going to come up here and touch this one because I see it up there. Up here as well. See, there are just a few places where there's just kind of single lone cloud details, so that's kind of nice. Just to add those guys in. I see a little bit down in the bottom section, so I'm going to bring that down. It's almost like these are highlighting the bottom edge. So again, going back to that thinking of, like, why is this looking the way that it looks? It's the sun. These are like skinny parts of the cloud, and the sun's just kind of creeping through that just a little bit. And touch just a little bit more, so try to remember you don't want to have just the paint that's come straight out of the tube. You want to mix it up just a little bit. Bring it over here. I feel like that's capturing it pretty well. I'm looking at just a few places where maybe the line feels a little bit too solid, and I'm just going to blend that just a little bit. Keeping that in mind, what I said earlier about how everything that you're painting right now is going to fade. I'm coming back, and if there's a place where it seems like it's really light, I'm just going to kind of touch that space again. All right. Last step to this process is I'm just going to bring white. It doesn't seem like white would be what you would want to use, but white is kind of a trick that really will make it look like these clouds are lit up. So, cleaning my brush thoroughly, I've got a little bit of white here. I want to have just a little bit of water in that white. But I want to use a lot of just the actual paint itself. So I'm just mixing it up, making sure I don't have a solid glob on here. And now I'm just going to touch, I'm going to try to touch just the bottom edges of these cloud spaces. And any place where I touch that bottom edge, especially that apricot color, that's going to make it look like it's just kind of lit up. As I'm looking at my image and studying my image, what I'm noticing about like kind of the way the light works here is that the bottom edge, that bottom edge is where you see most of the light. So just that little touch. And I think that's where I'm going to stop. Sometimes, so really important with clouds, and when you're painting clouds, is don't. If you start to do too much, you'll muddy it. So just kind of keep that in mind. If it's close, if you're kind of happy with it, stop. Because I say that as I'm continuing to paint here, because you can muddy it and you'll become unhappy with it fairly quickly. All right, I'm gonna stop there. Thanks for watching. Good luck with your hat making.